welcome to Criminal Record, the Daily Record's new weekly crime show. My name is Norman Silvester, and I'm the Daily Record's crime reporter. Today our special guest is Ann Marie Cockburn, whose mother, Ann Heron from Glasgow, was murdered on August the 3rd, 1990, while sunbathing in the garden of her home near Darlington, County Durham. Ann was found around 6 p.m. that evening by her husband Peter Heron, a local haulage contractor, and it remains one of Britain's most baffling unsolved murders. Today Ann Marie is here to tell us why she thinks the man responsible can still be brought to justice. Ann Marie, welcome to Criminal Record. As I remember, it was one of the hottest days of the year. I think it was about 40 degrees centigrade. She'd just been enjoying the sun, and I think she was due to go out that evening with some friends.
Yeah, she'd been out shopping in the morning, and she came back and was such a sun worshipper. So, first thing she did when she came back from shopping, she went out into the garden and sunbathed for a while. And what happened between lunchtime and 6 o'clock that night still remains a mystery. As you correctly said, Peter Heron came home that night and found my mum dead in her own home in her front room. We didn't find out until midnight that night. My brother came to the door. He was in the CID at the time, and I had no idea that he was going to give me the news that he was going to give me. It was just horrific, absolutely horrific. And to this day, we've never had any answers.
Tell us a bit about, you mentioned there that your brother Ralph came to the door. He was a detective constable with the Strathclyde Police at the time. He was living in the Glasgow area. Where were you at the time? Were you living in Scotland at the time?
Yeah. I had lived down in Darlington for a period of time, but I'd moved back up to Scotland. So I was living down the coast, down in Inverkip. With my partner at the time. We had a flat down there, and as I say, Ralph turned up midnight with a colleague. I was in bed, my partner opened the door, and Mum actually had a bit of a problem with her hand at the time. And my brother said to me, he said, I've got really bad news, and I just knew it was my mum. And I thought, God, she's got cancer. And he said, no, she's been found dead. And at that point, I had no idea. Absolutely no idea of what had happened.
When were you kind of filled in by the local police, Durham Constabulary, about the details? Did you go down there, or did somebody come up and speak to you? When did you learn the more details?
Yeah, we went up to, so my young brother at the time, so I was 24, Michael was 14. He was up north staying with an aunt, and we had gone up there. We had to break the news to a 14-year-old boy. And I actually heard my dad speaking to my aunt. I think my brother had obviously given my dad a wee bit more detail about what had happened. And that was the first I realised then that she had been killed. The time frame between then and the police, to be honest, Norman, it's all just a blur. It's an absolute blur. I remember going over and staying with my brother at the time, and the Durham Constabulary were up more often than not. They took statement after statement after statement. But I would say probably 2-3 months, that the whole period of time after that was just a bit of a blur for me.
And just to explain a little bit about background, Peter Heron was your mum's second husband. They'd married about 4 or 5 years earlier, and you referred to your dad there, who was also a police officer at the time. Tell us about the kind of days and weeks after that. Obviously, Peter Heron was the man that discovered your mum. Did you speak to him at all? Was he able to sort of tell you anything about, fill in any details?
No, there was no information given. He obviously, I don't know how the system works, but he was obviously sort of taken away and questioned at that time. We really weren't given a lot of information at all, apart from the fact that, she'd been found dead and it was suspicious circumstances. That was really all we got to know. I don't think I saw Peter Heron. I didn't hear from Peter Heron for maybe 2 or 3 days, and eventually did come up to Scotland. And from what I can remember, it was maybe a week after Mum had died. He came up to see the family up in Scotland, and that was emotional. At that point, we didn't know what else was going to come out in the press. So for me, seeing Peter, he was the closest person to Mum. I found that really, really difficult to deal with, to be honest.
What we have learned since is that when the police arrived at the house, there wasn't any sign of a kind of break-in or any sort of disturbance other than, there was nothing really missing, nothing had been stolen. Were you made aware of that? As obviously it's developed with the years, there wasn't really a lot of evidence, for the police to go on. Was that something you became aware of?
Yeah, eventually we did. Yeah, we were informed that, I think there was cash lying in the house that hadn't been, taken. As far as I know, there was no rogue DNA there. Everything that was there should have been there. Yeah, so motive-wise, I had no idea why somebody would do that to my mum.
That's the question, is what is the motive? It was quite a law-abiding area. There wasn't a lot of crime. One of the theories is it might have been a break-in, your mum might have disturbed an intruder, but there was no kind of history of that in that area, was it? Your mum would feel quite safe normally.
Well, the house at the time was quite remote. Now there is a main road that goes along the bottom, but the house was quite remote. I stayed in that house. There was no street lighting, so at night it was pitch black, and she was a wee bit nervous, but not through, any worry that, somebody was going to break into her house. It was just the fact it was quite a remote setting where she was. But no, as far as I was aware, she felt quite comfortable in the house. No enemies.
No enemies. And she looked forward. She was sunbathing that day. She looked forward to going out that night. And she had a kind of part-time job as well, didn't she? She's been a nurse before. And
she worked
in a care home.
Care home. Yeah, yep. Yeah, I think she just got to that stage in her life, as we all do, and she felt she maybe needed a wee bit more, and she got a part-time job there, and which was lovely because she made new friends, and she really, had started to, have a bit of a life outside the life that she had with Peter, which was lovely. That was comforting for me to see that, rather than think about her down there on her own and not having much of a life, to be honest.
Tell us about your relationship with your mum. I know you were very close, and how's that impacted you over the years? Because obviously she would still be in her 70s now, she was a relatively young mum. She never got a chance to meet your kids who are now grown up, the grandchildren. Tell us about you, because you spoke regularly, didn't you? You were regularly in touch with each other.
Yeah, Mum and I were really, really close. My mum, my mum's mum, the three of us were so tight. I stayed in Darlington. I lived with my mum for a while, and we were almost like best friends. And it was nice. I was just getting to the stage that I was seeing my mum as a person and not just a mum. We would go out shopping together. I mean, every week, we would go to the local supermarket. We would do our shopping. We would go to the pub together. We had a really, really special relationship. And when I had my two boys, I wanted my mum to be there for the births. I graduated. She wasn't there for my graduation. She wasn't there for my son's graduation. And I watch my friends now, the majority of them have their mums, and they're all doing their thing, doing all the stuff that Mum and I did together, and I've been robbed. We've all been robbed of just such a lovely, lovely lady.
We spoke about Peter Heron earlier, your stepfather. In 2005, we know he was charged with your mum's murder and appeared in court and was remanded in custody, but the case was dropped 3 months later. He was able to provide an alibi on the day of the murder. What was your kind of reaction to that when you heard he'd been charged? Was that quite shocking? Did that come out of the blue?
This is a difficult one, Norman. It's a really, really hard thing for me to talk about. I think, at this, the focus was very much on a blue car. And then Peter Heron was arrested. Well, it came out in the press, obviously, that the affair came out. And I think the focus was then very much on Peter. So when he was arrested, did it surprise me? It didn't surprise me, because I knew he was a prime suspect. But I find it really difficult because I have my own views on Peter. Yeah, I don't want to go into that too much detail, to be honest.
No, I understand that. Also, you referenced there another potential suspect. A man was seen driving away around about 5 o'clock in a kind of blue Ford type saloon car. He was quite dark skinned, or a kind of, well, I think it was described as quite suntan complexion, quite dark. But we don't know much more about him. That's been a bit of a mystery as well. We've never managed to track him down. We know there was one man identified as a possible, as a guy in the blue car, but he was eliminated. What's your feelings about that? The man in the blue car, that still needs to be kind of resolved, doesn't it? You've seen driving away at high speed out the driveway of your mother's home, 5 o'clock, an hour before she was discovered by Peter. That's a possible clue for the police, isn't it? That's still to be resolved.
Yeah. Yeah, as I say, they did focus very much on that at the start. Yeah, it does still have to be resolved. And you're right, the whole Mark Benson case, when that came out, I did get my hopes built up then. He fitted the description, the blue car. I'd still like that to be looked at a wee bit further. And I think that's probably something that I would like to maybe discuss further with Durham Constabulary.
Just to fill in for our viewers, about 4 years ago, the man in the blue car was identified, or possibly identified, as a Michael Benson, who was a kind of absconded from prison. He was a kind of, had a bit of a criminal record for violence and theft and robbery, and he'd from the Southampton area. The police did look into that, but I think they did a DNA comparison, didn't find any comparison with DNA found at the murder scene. So he was kind of eliminated. But it just goes to show that there is potential out there, that that man in the blue car could still be a vital witness of some description.
Yeah, I mean, you picked on a good point there. There was no sort of rogue DNA there on the day, Norman. But if this has been some random guy that's just gone into the house, is it somebody that has committed a similar crime before and been very careful, in the house? That's still a possibility. The fact that there was no rogue DNA there doesn't mean to say that it was a stranger in the house. Yeah.
Okay. And you just mentioned earlier about Peter. I think it came out at the time, or short time after your mum's murder, that he'd been having an affair with a local barmaid in the town or nearby, and that kind of brought him to sort of further attention of the police, didn't it, at the time?
Yeah. I mean, he didn't do himself any favours, and Peter, and he'll admit that himself. He didn't, come forward and say that he'd been having an affair, and I think that was a huge mistake on his part. And as I said earlier, that's when the focus, I think, was more on him. If you look at it, from an outsider's point of view, he ticks all the boxes, but does that make him the murderer? Then, in my mind, he's innocent until he's proven guilty, as is any suspect in the crime.
We know recently there's been a new senior officer appointed to the investigation into your mum, and they've been doing a review of the case. I think it was a couple of months ago. What's your current hopes with the investigation? We're now almost 35 years on. If we get a breakthrough, where are we going to get the breakthrough? Do you think it's going to be DNA or AI, artificial intelligence, or could it be simply somebody coming forward, a witness after all this time, maybe with information they didn't want to come forward at the time, they could come forward now? Where do you see the investigation going? What's your best hope of getting a breakthrough?
Who knows, Norman, as you say, there's many, lots of developments in DNA and forensic, and, maybe we will get lucky with that. The chances are that whoever committed the crime could have passed away now, they could be in jail, but I find it really difficult to comprehend that that there must be somebody out there that knows something, whether, he has been put in jail, if he has spoken to, a prison mate, or a family member, somebody must know, whether, as I say, whether he's dead or alive, somebody out there must have the information. And for us as a family, it's not going to change anything. Mum's never ever going to come back, but you think about it constantly, and are we ever going to come to a conclusion? And it's just to get that final piece in the jigsaw puzzle. It's just wrong. She was whiter than white. The police kind of looked into her background to check if there was anything there, if she'd been having an affair, and she hadn't. I just can't understand why somebody would want that to do that to my mum. And we need the answers.
Both you and your brother Ralph have been critical in the past of the police investigation. We are now 35 years on. I know Ralph has spoken with the new Detective Chief Inspector recently. Were you encouraged by what she had to say? Ralph appeared to be quite encouraged. Are you quite encouraged that the Ralph could be able to take this forward?
I always think it's interesting when a new CIO comes on or SIO comes on board. It's fresh eyes. But to be fair, we've had quite a few over the years, and they have maybe gone down different avenues. We'll see where it takes us. We'll see where this one takes us. Am I confident? It's 35 years down the line and we still haven't had the answers that we deserve. So I'm not confident, to be honest.
But we do have the new technology, which offers now we've got developments in DNA all the time, and artificial intelligence can look at links and the evidence chain. Do you think that maybe the science could solve this at the end of the day, rather than a case of somebody coming forward? Could the science? Do you believe that science developments could be the key? Could it solve your mother's murder after all this time?
Yeah. It could, if they have, the equipment there to do it, and if they still have, forensic evidence there from the scene. There's certain things that I'm not privy to. I don't know whether they still have, samples from, from my mum. I don't know how long these samples keep. The carpet, do they still have the carpet? I don't think they do. So, if they still have stuff there that they can test, then yeah, there is hope there that possibly they could get something from that.
Just, we touched on this earlier, but obviously people with information. Do you think there are maybe people holding back on information? It's quite a small local community. Everybody knows everyone else. Do you think there might be somebody out there that's kind of holding back, who knows more about the events of that day, that could maybe come forward and be a key to solving this? Do you think that's a possibility?
Absolutely. As I said earlier on, I can't believe that whoever committed the crime hasn't spoken to somebody about it. So yeah, I do think there's somebody out there that has information that could just give us peace of mind as a family.
What would your message be to them? Would you urge them to come forward? Because this has been 35 years. You've had to live with this for 35 years. Would you, if there is somebody out there that's got kind of key evidence that could make the difference between this case being solved and remaining unsolved, would you urge them to come forward this time, particularly as it's the 35th anniversary?
Yeah, I just think, have a bit of compassion, put yourself in our shoes. If it's a family member, if it had been your family member, if it had been your mum, your sister, your daughter, it's unimaginable, what it does to you. And we have to live with this every single day of our lives. And we just want answers. You know, whoever did it, as I say, they could have passed away. I just want to know the reasons why.
Finally, Ann Marie, are you surprised that it's taken so long to solve this case? You maybe think at the time it would be solved within a short space of time, and obviously your brother had been,
I think,
successful in his own career as a detective.
Yeah, I think they say if it's not solved within the first 48 hours, then you know that you're going to struggle after that. Did I think it would take 35 years and possibly beyond? Absolutely not. No.
Well, let's all hope that 35 years after the murder of your mother, you can finally get some closure, and whoever's out there with information, perhaps they can come forward, and hopefully there may be a breakthrough with a new review of the case and with the latest technology which can be used by police to solve unsolved murders. Ann Marie, thank you for joining us. Yeah. Thank you for joining Criminal Records.
Okay, thank you, Norman. Thanks.